If you've heard it once, you've heard it 1,000 times. Your wedding day goes by so quickly. And you're like, what the hell am I meant to do about that? So you plan your timeline down to the minute and try to jam as many things as possible into your day. But then the day after, you're not only exhausted, but your emotions are tinged with a little regret. Some couples feel a definite sense of wedding guilt, as in they feel bad that they didn't get to chat or spend quality time with all of their guests. Because that's what you thought you were signing up for, right? Where you both walk away feeling recharged and connected to your closest family and friends. If only you had more time with them. The answer is multi-day weddings. In some cultures and religions, they've been doing it for centuries, but in Western culture, we're only just starting to understand the possibilities. And this is where Dana and Courtney come in. As owners of Anthem House, they specialise in multi-day wedding events that span over 2, 3, or even 4 days and know all the ins and outs to make them successful without wearing you out or sending you broke either. Today, Courtney and Dana will teach you the different types of wedding events that you might want to host, which guests to invite, how and when, the rise of a more sort of after-wedding vacation option with your closest family and friends, plus how to be prepared, pace yourself, and look after your mental health during this extended weekend of celebrating. And we also solve a personal mystery for me when we chat about what the Americans call a rehearsal dinner. I mean, what the fuck are they doing over there anyway? Let's get stuck into this. Unbridely is a community of pro-wedding vendors who believe in freedom and integrity in weddings, giving you options, solutions, tips and tricks to create the experience and memories that you and your fiancé really want and deserve. Because we believe that weddings are a team sport. With how-tos, stories and interviews with recently married couples, we find out what went right and what they'd change if they could go back and do it all over again. I'm Camille and welcome to the Unbridely podcast. Hi, Dana. Hi, Courtney. Thank you so much for joining me on the Unbridely podcast.
Thanks for having us. We're excited to be here.
So you're from Hustle and Gather, but you also have several other businesses. Tell us a bit about where you've come from and what you do now.
Sure. Yeah. We have a wedding venue that does about 120 to 130 weddings per year. We have an event planning company. Our OG company, C&D Events, does about 90 to 100 events per year. And then we have Anthem House, which is our planning company that specializes in multi-celebration weekends. We do about 5 to 6 weddings per year with that.
And then we have Hustle and Gather, which is like our education brand. So we do speaking, consulting, and training other companies. And that's
podcasting.
Yes. So all the things.
That's incredible. In your spare time, of course. So today we're going to chat about one of your favorite topics, and that is multi-day wedding events. So first of all, what are we talking about when you're saying multi-day?
So we're talking about a wedding that's not just happening on one day. They are a series of events to celebrate that couple. So it might look like welcome party or rehearsal dinner and then a wedding and a brunch following after that, kind of in our traditional sense. But many cultures have done this for centuries, right? And I feel like we, and like kind of a westernized culture, are just now kind of getting in line with like, we should be celebrating these things over multiple days as opposed to like 1 6-hour time block, you know, because it is a big commitment physically and metaphorically, obviously. But like, think about your family and kind of like that reunion aspect of it, getting everybody together. It's hard to feel like you kind of touched everyone in that very short time block of a wedding. And I think it allows you to have a more thorough and enjoyable celebration of getting married or being together.
I think especially post-COVID that a lot of people are looking to have an extended catch-up as well. Because when your friends and family, you know, sometimes are flying in from interstate, sometimes overseas, and I don't know why I've never really thought about this before, but if you see all of your guests, let's say it's 100 guests, for 5 minutes, that's 8 hours. Like 5 minutes, that's crazy.
That is crazy.
That's crazy. So I certainly see the allure.
We've noticed a huge change post-COVID. And I think you're exactly right that people just have recognized the value of connecting more than in that. Because truthfully, if it's 100 guests, 5 minutes, they don't even get that. They get 30 seconds at the table to say, hey, thanks for coming and going on, right?
Do you have experience of your clients who have done different things? Like, what are the highlights for you?
Well, like one of the things that we can talk about personally, and it wasn't necessarily a wedding, but it was like a multi-day celebration, is when we built our new ballroom at the Bradford. It was done in March of 2020. So you can imagine how well our kickoff party went. Not at all.
It didn't happen.
Didn't happen. So, and it was dedicated to our grandparents and all of that. So that year, instead of having that party, what we did was we invited up all of our family. It was like 32 of us to our venue. And we had multi-day celebrations. Like we had a party with a bartender and food. It was over Thanksgiving. So then we
took a lot of planning.
So
Everyone
much
had to
planning.
like quarantine for 2 weeks to get up here and
COVID testing and all
Right.
of those things for sure. Because we were all stuck on the property at that point. No
Right.
one's going anywhere. And so we did like the welcome party. We had like activities on the venue planned. We'd had a catered Thanksgiving. We had something the next day before everyone went back. But it just gave us the experience of what it's like to kind of have this multi-day celebration that our clients experience, and to be able to like wake up in the morning and have a coffee with our 86-year-old grandparent at that point, you know, or like play a game with our cousin's child that we would never see, right? Like it was really fun and meaningful. And I think that that is the thing about these like kind of multi-celebration weekends, is that it just creates these meaningful connections, meaningful time. There is no time in your life that this group of people are ever going to be together again. It's literally just this weekend.
yeah, just doing it for the right reasons. Exactly what Courtney said. It's about connection. It's about relationships. And, you know, and we've definitely had clients that have done it for the Instagram or whatever, and they don't enjoy it as much. They don't get that same experience out of it. So, you know, this isn't for everybody. I think that's super important to know, that this isn't something that every single couple is going to love, but it is such a valuable thing and such a wonderful experience that you'll never, ever have again.
Sounds absolutely beautiful. Yeah, talk to me. What's a welcome party?
What we have found is people really love the kind of a slow start to the weekend, and a welcome party is just that. It's normally, it's not, I don't want to say it's casual. I mean, it could be as formal and like big as you want it to be. But what we see on the average is a little bit more laid back, where it's kind of more of like a cocktail style. Either it's later in the evening, so after everyone's checked into their hotel, either it's like a kind of like a station style dinner, or maybe it's just dessert and drinks, but it's something just to say welcome to the start of wedding weekend. And we've seen it, you know, honestly on a Thursday when the wedding's on Saturday, and then Saturday's kind of reserved for like that rehearsal dinner time and, you know, that kind of connection. Or we've seen it also like where it's just been on a Friday as well, and typically after the rehearsal dinner. So it's just kind of whatever the preference is of the couple. But I think if people are really leaning into like a full weekend, we see a lot of welcome parties on that Thursday evening. Everyone's flown in and they're just having a wonderful drink and just starting to connect with people that they haven't seen in a long time.
And I think it's very unscripted. You know, like there are so many things that you're packing into a wedding day. So there's places that either partners have to be at certain times of the day, right? And they don't have that at a welcome party. So you can spend those 10 or 15 minutes with your cousin, aunt, friend, et cetera, that you would not have the time to do on your wedding day.
I wanted to ask you as well, you know, and you were just saying then, your cousin that flew in, is this mainly for out-of-town guests, or is everyone invited? Like, how do you handle the invitations with something like a welcome party?
That's a great question. I think it's a personal decision, but we typically welcome parties all the guests. Everyone who wants to come typically comes. What we see the most is people that have flown in, especially if you're talking about maybe someone's coming in from like an hour and a half, 2 hours. Most people aren't going to make that drive to get to that one single event, but it's typically open to everybody. It kind of acts like, I don't know, it just sets the tone for the whole weekend, and it acts like this little mini reunion, and it gets everybody kind of hyped about like what's going to happen over the next, 3 days. So we see a lot that people just extend it to everybody, but the people who show up are the ones who have flown in.
And I do think it takes the pressure off wedding day.
Yes,
right?
so much.
So there's, like I said, you're really focused on what's happening next. And I love the idea of that they're focused on each other during that day. You've kind of gotten all of that, out of the way between rehearsal dinner, welcome party, et cetera.
Because that is exactly what you're straddling.
Mm-hmm.
You're right. It's the couple getting married. But then, what's the point of inviting all these people if you're not going to spend time with them? And then you don't spend time with your brand new spouse. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. You're right. So we've talked about the welcome party. What other little mini events have you seen work in a multi-day wedding celebration?
Like a bridal luncheon. So typically either like that Thursday or Friday, getting together bridesmaids or aunts, uncles, extended family and doing something the morning of the rehearsal. I think we've seen that. Obviously, rehearsal dinners, kind of making those a bigger and more coordinated event to the wedding. Post-wedding, we've seen, brunches or activities that you can do together. Even scheduling like an outing, I think would be something that would be appropriate as well. That could happen before or after the wedding. So just really thinking through like the guest experience of that weekend, like what they've come in for, what you coordinated for them, how they're going to experience that. It's also making it personal to you. Like, how are they experiencing you and your relationship and et cetera while you're hosting them for your wedding?
And it's really neat to focus on, especially if people are coming into like what I call your turf, like as a couple, like this is where you guys live. It's where you work. It's where you play. And it's really neat to give them a glimpse into your world. So taking them to your favorite bar, your favorite place to go golfing, your favorite, lake or whatever, and like really providing those experiences so that these maybe cousins you haven't seen in 5 years or aunts and uncles that haven't seen you in a long time really get a full picture of who you are like now, and then also who you guys are as a couple. So we always encourage it to be personal. There isn't like a specific formula for it, but just whatever you feel like is going to showcase who you guys are and a little bit of your story.
We have a couple that's getting married. We're planning their 2024 wedding right now, and it is a multi-celebration weekend through Anthem House, and the welcome party is at their favorite restaurant where they've celebrated many like milestones. So like their graduation, their engagement party. And so they're having this welcome party at this space that's really meaningful to them so their guests can experience kind of what they love about their home turf,
It sounds absolutely awesome, but I can also hear my listener going, this sounds great. I see the advantages. I love it. I love the idea, but it sounds like a heap more work and it sounds super expensive. How can couples, get some of the advantages with maybe not as much stress?
I mean, a planner is going to help you a lot, shameless plug for that. There's a couple of, if you're really, really on a budget, right? I think that really tapping into your resources is super important. Someone that you trust, whether that is you have, your favorite, Aunt Sally, like she would probably love to put on a welcome party for you or a brunch or something like that. But key here is it's not an obligation ask. It's someone that you trust and that you love and that you value their opinion because they're going to create the event that you really want. I think is one way to kind of tap into it. And then I also think just really think about what do you value the most? And then that's where you're going to put that extra money. Like, for a lot of our couples, that welcome party is super important to them because, again, it's a little bit more relaxed. It's more important than necessarily the rehearsal dinner, or maybe it's more important than the brunch. And then we have some couples who's like, the day after is like paramount. Like, I want to like relive every moment with everybody. I want to like debrief about the night, like all this stuff. And so every person has their own personal like value that they have. And so really focusing on what that is. And that's where you're going to spend that extra money.
And I think too, just because you've coordinated it doesn't mean you necessarily have to pay for it all. So like thinking through a welcome party, it could be like first drinks on us, right? And so it's not an open bar situation, but they know they're paying for future drinks, but it gives you access to the couple. You want to see them mix and mingle, come have the drink. It's a minimal spend at that point. And if they want more, it's on them. So like thinking through a little bit creatively, like how can you provide experiences, but doesn't necessarily mean that you have to pay for all set experiences.
That's talking to my couples. I'm wondering as well, because obviously you guys are in the States. I'm here in Australia. When you say rehearsal, my mind goes to a ceremony rehearsal, but you're talking about a rehearsal dinner. So for the Aussie listening, can you explain what a rehearsal dinner is?
So typically you do the rehearsal and then you go to dinner afterwards. And it's like all of the bridesmaids, bridal party, mom, dad, grandparents,
everyone involved in the wedding.
They go and they have a dinner or sometimes a brunch or a breakfast, depending on when your rehearsal is.
And it's typically paid for by the partner who isn't footing the wedding bill.
Because as an Australian, I thought, I don't know, I might not be across it, but I thought that the rehearsal dinner was you are literally going, this is how the dinner's going to go. I thought you rehearsed the dinner. I thought that you rehearsed the speeches. Is that a part of generally what you would see at a rehearsal dinner?
No. So you do not have rehearsal dinners at all?
Yeah.
In Australia?
No.
Okay. So what do you do?
No, not really. I mean, with my other hat on, I'm a marriage celebrant. So we jot on out. We go and do, a quick run through. This is how mics are going to work. This is how you get in. This is how you get out. Everyone goes, yay, feel so much more confident. And they may go out for a meal or a drink after, but they would never call it a rehearsal dinner as such. So I guess that's maybe where the confusion is. And so, here I am going, okay, the Americans are running around practicing their speeches. I don't know, practicing the first dance. Like, what the hell are you doing over there?
At these rehearsal dinners, there are speeches, but it's the people who you don't want talking at your wedding. So like maybe it's like the groom's parents, or maybe it's like the secondary best friends, or like if your sibling isn't in the wedding party, it would be the time for them to say something. If you don't want like a slideshow or something like that at your wedding, which who does? This would be the time to pull out all those goofy pictures and laugh about them together with your closest family. So it's very much like, it's like all of the ancillary things that you don't want to happen on the wedding day, but you want to celebrate. And it's with the people who are really participating in the wedding.
And I don't know where it came from, but I tend to think that it's more of a Southern tradition, like a Southern American tradition.
Really?
Yeah, because I think rehearsal dinners have always been a thing, but like how big they are and like the big celebration, because there used to be like everyone has like a groom's cake at that. It's like this really weird or like a super designed cake that signifies the groom. But I think it's like a lot of it came from, I actually don't know this. I'm just like hypothetically thinking from the mother of the groom wanting to do something in a lot of ways.
Because like someone at some point was like, I need to get this woman off my back.
Yeah.
Let's give her something to do. We're going to call it the rehearsal dinner. And then all of a sudden it was, you want it, you pay for it, it's good. You do it.
No, that's true. But that's what it feels like.
That's what it feels like. Yeah. But it's literally like expected. I don't know very many weddings that don't have rehearsal dinners. Yeah.
Yeah, that's just fascinating. I find that really, really interesting, because I don't know many weddings here in Australia that would have a rehearsal dinner. But I really love that idea of maybe the auntie who should never be given alcohol in one hand and a microphone in the other, that you can almost go, do you know what, Aunt Mary, this is your moment.
That's right.
While the video's not rolling, this is your time. You say whatever you want, girl. I love that.
Yes. It saves so much time on the wedding day and embarrassment and all the things. Like, it's a great way. And it's great for people to feel really included in the celebration.
If you had a sweary, chocolate-addicted, wine-sipping fairy godmother who could help you with your wedding planning, what would you wish for? Perhaps no more waking up in the middle of the night in a cold sweat, wondering what you've forgotten, or fretting about your RSVPs. Maybe no more spreadsheets or post-it notes or endless to-do lists. Well, I can help you with all of that. Wedsites is an Australian wedding website builder, guest management software, and wedding project planner all in one. Why is this such a game changer for you? Well, imagine everything to do with your wedding being in one place, updated in real time in the cloud, shareable to anyone else that's helping you, password protected for your guests, with notifications to tell you what needs to be done next and by when. It's amazing, right? I love how easy Wedsites is to set up and use, and how there are no ads on the platform yelling at you to spend more money on your wedding. To get started on your very own free wedding website, just head to wedsites.com. That's WEDSITES.com, and enter the code UNBRIDELYPOD, that's Unbridely POD, to get 10% off their paid planning tools. The link is in the show notes.
We talked about like the Sunday brunch or whatever, but there's actually been a really big push that I've noticed, especially in smaller events. So people who have like 100 guests or less, and especially if everyone's been traveling out of town, they typically tend to push their honeymoon off a week or so, and they'll stay 2 or 3 days with their closest friends, their bridesmaids, their groomsmen, maybe some college besties. And they'll explore that new town together, and they'll spend 3 or 4 days just hanging out, like enjoying, like almost like a mini vacation afterwards frame. And then they go on their honeymoon that next weekend. So I've seen some of that, which I would think kind of falls in line with like that kind of recovery, like kind of vibe.
But I mean, as far as like formal events, like where you're like, okay, if we're thinking it's going to be a welcome party and a rehearsal dinner and a wedding and a brunch, no, like you were expected to like show up at that brunch dressed, makeup on, like ready to do the next thing.
Yeah, but total side
recovery.
note, I had this bride one time. Her and all her friends were nurses. And so literally the day of the Sunday brunch, they had IVs set up for everybody and everyone got a bag of fluids before they walked into the Sunday brunch to recover from like the crazy hangover. And I was like, this is genius.
Mm-hmm.
Genius.
That's so good.
Yeah.
That is like next level recovery. I love that. But sorry, I was really shocked. I was a bit taken aback, Courtney, when you said you're rocking up dressed, you're rocking up full hair and
yeah.
makeup on.
Yeah.
This is your definition of a recovery brunch.
I mean, I wouldn't call it a recovery brunch, but it's like a continuation of the party.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. That's a really good thing to know if I'm ever invited, because I think as an Australian, I would rock up going, makeup hasn't been taken off yet. Hair is just, a mismatch of what happened last night.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, if I've pulled on clothes,
yeah,
I'm one of the better guests. Good to know. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Standards are a little bit higher.
Mm-hmm.
Good to know. Okay. So we've worked out maybe the different types of multi-wedding events for couples, maybe your rehearsal dinner, maybe your brunch afterwards. I love that idea, having your friends over, maybe it's an Airbnb or something for a couple of days after to really catch up with your closest friends. That's really cool. So let's say an engaged couple's listening to this and they're going, love this idea. Love the idea of stretching it out, having a little bit more than maybe 5 minutes with every guest. Mm-hmm. How can an engaged couple start planning this? When should they start planning this? How can they get organized?
Yeah, I mean, I think that location is important at that point. You could approach it a couple of different ways. Like, is it one space that you keep flipping for these events? Or is it in a town that has enough infrastructure to support multiple events? Where are these people staying? How close is that to the venue? Are you going to have to provide transportation to all of these events? So like thinking through like how you want it to flow. And there's no right or wrong answer there, right? And then when you are booking, you got to think about it very holistically. So like if you have your heart set on a venue, like a specific space for maybe your, welcome party, you want to book those at the same time. So make sure that you're like setting up the sequence of events kind of from the very get-go. Mm-hmm. So I do think there's a little bit more thought that has to go into it and probably a little more upfront cost when you're talking about deposits and, reserving spaces and whatnot. Then I think the planning of it goes very similar to wedding planning where, it ebbs and it flows and you have big planning times and lulls in planning times. But I definitely think thinking through before you book your wedding space, exactly what you want this weekend to look like and make sure it's available.
Yeah. And making sure you have a budget that matches what you want. So kind of like Courtney alluded to, like, our venue is a little bit rural, so we're not close to many things. So when people plan a wedding weekend here, they have to budget for transportation and that's expensive. So if you're a little bit tighter on budget and you don't want to spend as much money, going somewhere like a downtown area or like in a city or somewhere you can Uber there. It's super easy for people to get to their hotel, to the different spaces. Is going to save you a lot of money. And more people will actually show up and enjoy it. Or walking distance. I know a lot of clients don't think of because they just fall in love with the space and they're like, we'll make it work, but really having a grounding conversation of like, okay, if we really want this weekend, like, what is this going to mean for our guests? Like, what are we asking them to do? Are we being safe with it? Because maybe you're like, oh, they won't need transportation, but they're drinking over here and they have to drive back to wherever the hotels are. Like, you just want to be mindful of that.
That's a really great perspective. I really like that. So thinking about the multi-day events from your guest perspective, you're rocking up, you're doing this, you're getting changed into this outfit. That's the other thing that I wanted to ask. Is it common to have themed multi-day events?
Mm-hmm.
Like, are people dressing a certain way or a certain dress code? What have you found?
Well, I think in these cases, to be clear is to be kind, right? So you want to let people know like what the expectations are because they don't know. If you're like, we're having it at the Bradford, like, what does that mean? Is that a downtown bar? Do you do bowling there as well? Are we like, what are we doing during this event? And so letting them know like the type of dress. And I think oftentimes as far as like color scheme, that the invitation dictates. But I think letting them know, like, this is casual dressy, or this is black tie, or this is cocktail, etc. So people, know what to bring and know how to arrive and show up.
And there's some people that have a ton of fun with it and they will theme it out. Like it'll be like, this is like come in your favorite beach attire or come dressed as a Star Wars character or whatever. I mean, whatever kind of floats your boat, right? But if it's not like a specific theme, for sure, always recommend giving people a dress code, because we've all been there where we've worn something, we were underdressed or overdressed, and it's so uncomfortable. And it makes you just kind of like annoyed that like, why didn't anyone tell me?
For sure. And I find that just with weddings in general, the more information you can tell your guests, the better they react to things. And so I wanted to ask that as well. I know it's not on the questions list, but I was wondering, when you're planning these events, so you're saying you really need to be thinking of this and conceiving your plans and how you want it to flow quite early on to get perhaps, the discount of having a couple of days at a certain venue, and to start putting things in place. But when do you invite your guests to that? Are these multi-day events all wrapped up in the wedding invitation? The couples that you work with, how do you find they invite their guests, and when do they do that?
Well, I think you let them know on the save the date. And if you're directing them to a wedding website, there's typically like an itinerary given. If there are specific events that you want specific people to, right? And if you're doing a paper invitation, it would just look like another invitation piece that's in their particular invitation, so they know that they're invited to that. But I think most people in today's day and age are using a wedding website, and they're like, hey, save the date. We have so many things in mind. And maybe you don't have all the details fleshed out, but you can let them know that there will be something on Thursday. There will be stuff for you to do Friday. We'll be wrapping up on Sunday, etc. So I think that's how they let them know. Plan ahead and hype up their guests for, what's going to be a fun weekend.
Can you give us any other ideas or insights or tips onto how to make them successful?
Well, I think as a couple, to be successful, you have to pace yourself. So you don't want to go out as an all-night rager on your welcome party, because you still have the rehearsal dinner to get to. You still have your wedding to get to. You still have your Sunday to get to, right? So really, I always have your buddy that's going to be, the one that's making sure you're staying in line or whatever, or having that conversation with your significant other that's with you, and just kind of setting some parameters so you guys can't be successful.
Peak too early.
Don't want to peak too early. You want to try to be successful, get through the whole weekend. So definitely pacing yourself is super important. And I think, even having the same conversation with your bridal party, you don't want them to be throwing up at your rehearsal dinner because they're so hungover, right? That's not enjoyable. It's not fun. So just about it. You don't have to be like, this is how it's going to be, but just kind of having the conversation and saying, hey, there's a lot of drinks, and these are my expectations for you. And I just want you to have a great night. Be prepared like a Boy Scout, right? You should have all the things, all the Alka-Seltzer, Tums, ibuprofen, Tylenol, liquid IVs, all the things that that are going to get you through a weekend of constant celebrating. I was going to say partying, but celebrating.
Celebrating.
And then I would also say, check your mental health. When you are around people constantly answering questions and talking, it's a lot and it's super draining. So just make sure you're building in time for you, whether that is you're going to have an hour to yourself in the hotel room,
at a spa day,
whatever it is, whatever you need and for you personally to be able to get through all of that interaction. If your mom drives you crazy, limit the amount of time you spend with your mom, because by Saturday, it's just not going to drive you as crazy than she normally does, right? So figure out what it is that makes you super successful when you are in these situations, what it is that feeds you and is going to allow you to be the best version of yourself, because there's been so many times that the intent is great and the clients are happy to be there, but they're so overwhelmed. They're so burnt out that they can't even enjoy the actual wedding day at that point because they're just over it. So I think making sure that, one, you're someone who can stand to be around people for that long, for 4 days straight.
It's not everybody,
right? And you're just doing what you need to do in order to kind of get yourself to the right space mentally, physically.
They are such good tips. So, perhaps for the more introverted couples, you might want to have maybe shorter bites. Mm-hmm. You might want to have a more padded timeline to really help yourself get around these different celebrations and still recharge yourself before the next thing comes up. You just don't want to be jamming it all in.
Right. But it could look like instead of maybe having a bridesmaid brunch, you have a bridesmaid spa day and there's time that you're spending alone, right? Or maybe if you love movies, it's like a movie viewing party or something. Like there is like this time that's quiet and to yourself. So like just think through who you are and what's going to make you feel, present and happy and be able to recharge. Because it's a long weekend. It's a lot.
And I think too, just also like speaking up for yourself about it. So there's been a couple of times when we've had clients who don't necessarily like love the idea of having like this grand old big like welcome party or whatever, but the parents really want it. Like the parents have like friends coming in from all over. And it's okay to bow out. It's okay to be like, you know what? We're going to have this and I'm going to be there for an hour. I'm going to be there from 7 to 8. And then I'm going to go do my thing and you are welcome to have all the fun. Like it just, I think you have to advocate for yourself. No one needs to talk you into it, right? It is your marriage you're celebrating. It is your celebration and you can set the parameters for how you want to be celebrated. But it's okay if people want to do things outside of what you have planned, right? If they want to continue on to party, that's fine. Don't feel obligated to go. You can say, hey, and then go do your thing.
Yeah, that's brilliant. The special guest appearance. So you can rock up for an hour, have a drink, say hi to everyone, take some photos.
Look fabulous.
And then, sign some autographs and you're out. That's really good.
You're like Rihanna at the last Met Gala, walking up at 10:45.
Exactly. Oh, any other final tips for these couples who are going, okay, this could be really cool. We could do this. Any other gold nuggets of advice?
I would say, examine your budget and talk to all the stakeholders, right? So like talking through if parents are contributing or grandparents or you are your fiance, et cetera, and kind of put that in a pool and talk about what you want each aspect to look like. I think that Dana made a good point that kind of think about what's the most meaningful to you. Just because you go all out on a welcome party could mean that maybe you're doing a pizza rehearsal dinner. I don't really know. Think about what is going to be the most impactful to you. And I think personalize. Make sure that there are some connections to you all along the way to both partners so people can really experience, you and your relationship and leave that weekend feeling like they know you a bit better.
Brilliant intentions. So with all your businesses, Dana and Courtney, what have you both got on the boil at the moment? Have you got anything coming up that you can share with us?
From like our training and consulting, so like we have a lot of courses that are rolling out this year. We have a really great hiring bundle on how to hire your next employee. But even if you're not hiring, there's some really great tidbits and just figuring out who you are and how you manage people, which is helpful, I think, for like planners and whatnot, understanding how to manage that event day team.
And we speak at a lot of national conferences and whatnot. So there's a good chance, like if you follow us, you could for a conference near you, et cetera.
Dana and Courtney, where can people find you if they need your help with multi-day wedding celebrations, or maybe they want to pop down to the Bradford?
Yeah. So we are all over the gram at the Bradford NC, at C&D Events, at Anthem.House, and at Hustle and Gather. I mean, it's been a great interview.
Yeah.
Been a lot of fun.
That's a lot.
They're not always fun. Yeah. It's true.
I hear you. I appreciate, your smiling faces at this time on this side of the planet too. Really appreciate it. That about wraps it up for this episode of the Unbridely podcast. For the links and resources we mentioned, please head to the show notes. And if you love the show, please review and subscribe on the podcast platform you're on now so you don't miss out on a single episode. Thanks so much for listening. And remember, weddings are a team sport. Catch you soon.